I'm Victoria Umarogi. I'm the Senior Lifestyle Editor of Essence, and I love wine. Who else out here loves wine? Come on. Yeah. Shake your glasses, your cups, your hands, all of it. But there's a lot of nuances with wine, right? Like, sometimes we're not saying the names right. Sometimes we don't know what to pair the meals with our drinks. We don't know what we're doing sometimes, and that can make us feel a little bit intimidated to enjoy wine fully. So we're here with these ladies who have these amazing brands to kind of just help us to feel more comfortable and enjoy what we're sipping, okay? So first and foremost, I wanted to ask you ladies, how did you both come to have an affinity for wine? When did the love of it begin for you? Let's start with you, Miss Ingrid.
Well, first of all, it's really good to be here. Can you guys hear me? You can hear me? You can hear me? Okay, good. It's good to be here. You all look beautiful. I like to say wine is in my blood. I didn't realize it was, but it is. I've had the great fortune of working for some really big organizations for years who had beautiful wine portfolios. And so that's really where I got introduced to wine and my love for wine began. So it's been a long love affair.
Yes, tell us about you.
Well, my love for wine started many years ago, but it was really fortified during my travels. How many of y'all like to travel?
Yes.
Right? And so really through my travels and also learning by tasting wine, I became very intrigued. Also, when I realized how much goes into wine production and the nuances of wine in general, because there's so much to know and learn and appreciate about wine, it was like a never-ending adventure. And I love adventure. Yes. So for me, wine is a never-ending adventure, and I fell in love during my travels.
I love that, I love that. And so for some people, like, we like cocktails, we like, different things. If you're trying to get into wine, what would you say is the best wine to start with for beginners who really want to just, like, become a little connoisseur? What would you say? Yes,
if you want to get into it.
Connoisseur.
I mean, there are thousands of different types of wines, right? So even if somebody says, I'm not really a wine person, you probably haven't found the right wine for you. I just suggest to try all types of wines, maybe starting with something that's more fruit forward, maybe a Pinot Noir, or especially blends. I find that red blends are really approachable as well.
Because they're like fruity and sweet. And sweet wines are really approachable, right?
Well, you can have dry red blends.
Yes. Okay.
I prefer a dry red blend actually, but when we focus on the flavor and the aroma of a wine versus looking to taste sugar, I think that's really when the magic happens. That's when really we can get into what the wine is actually trying to express to us.
Nice. Ingrid, what would you say is a great beginner wine?
Listen, wine is art, and wine is like art. It's very subjective. So I think everyone has their own palate, right? Where you start really depends on what kind of food you like, where you live, right? The temperature. So there's a lot of things that go into, in my opinion, where you start in your journey of drinking wine. There's no wrong answer. Start wherever it meets you at, right? So wine will meet you where you are.
Fact.
And again, it's really subjective. So I started with Chardonnay, which probably is no surprise, but I grew up in the Bay Area, right, near Napa. But again, some people start with red. So I think it's really subjective, but you made a great point about blends.
Yeah.
I have 2 blends, and the reason why I did that is because they're very approachable.
Yeah.
So blends tend to be very approachable. So I would say I'm kind of suggesting folks look for blends that you think will let you try different varietals at the same time.
Okay, awesome. And Carissa, I know you have Pinot Noir.
Yes.
And you are a wine sommelier.
Yes.
Can you tell us what is the best way to consume your wine? I saw a question on Google. Somebody said, should I slurp wine? What is the best way to kind of swirl it on your palate and really to get the best flavors out of Pinot Noir?
Well, so at Pure Noir, we have 2 tasting rooms, one in Houston, one in Dallas. We also ship across the country. But the experience in our tasting room is really a guided interactive wine tasting experience. And we start with the fundamentals of wine tasting, otherwise known as the 5 S's.
Yes.
Do y'all want to hear about the 5 S's of wine tasting?
Yes, we do.
I see some of my customers in this room. Shout out to all the Pure peeps. But we like to start with what we see in our wine. You'd be so surprised about what you can learn about a wine just based on what you see. Then I always like to smell a wine, because a wine is so expressive even on the nose, and so much of what we taste is also what we smell in that experience of tasting. We swirl it to really open up those aromatics, and then we smell it again. We sip it and we savor it. So that's just a real quick, easy 5 S's of wine tasting. No matter what you're drinking, hopefully it's Pure Noir and one of our 13 different premium and award-winning wines. But even if it's not, hopefully y'all will remember the 5 S's of wine tasting.
Nice, nice. And Ingrid, you have iBest wines, and you're a wine negociant. So for people who don't know what that is, can you kind of break down what it means to be a wine negociant and how you came to have iBest?
Yeah, so let me break it down. I've been in the wine and spirits business for many years. I fell in love with wine, but I also fell in love with the business of wine. So as a wine negociant, what that simply means is that I'm in the business of wine. I'm not a somm, I'm not a winemaker. I'm someone who understands the business, had a passion for it, and launched my own brand. And so I think it's really important to make sure people know that there is a big difference between being a wine brand owner and a winemaker, because winemakers go to school, they are really anchored in education. Sommeliers spend a lot of time in the science of wine. I am in the business of wine. I love wine, and I know how to build and market great things, and I work hand in hand with our winemaker, but I am what you call a wine negociant. And iBest Wines is my namesake brand, and I'm very proud of it.
Awesome, awesome. And I know you mentioned like a starter wine that you would recommend is like Chardonnay. You were saying a blend is good. But for you both personally, what is your preferred taste? What is your preferred drink when it comes to wines? Do you like them dry? What is your thing?
Let me tell you, as a producer of wine who's very passionate about my product, that is the hardest question on earth. My palate is, one day it could be my beautiful rosé made of Tempranillo. Another day it could be my beautiful gold-medaled red blend called Pure Epiphany. But right now it's hot, it's summertime. I love my rosé vibes, rosé all day.
Yes, rosé.
But then also, again, a red blend like Pure Epiphany, which is the first wine that we ever started producing. It's actually named after the moment that my husband, Kenneth, and I decided to become winemakers. After traveling and deciding on a beautiful, bold, fruit-forward red blend. It's named Pure Epiphany, and to me, that's my go-to because it's so versatile, it's so approachable, it's still fruit-forward, but it also has a little bit of a spicy side, which I really enjoy. So the answer is any wine in the Pure Noir portfolio.
Yes.
You better big up yourself. Ingrid, how about you? What is your go-to taste?
Yeah, so I, for a long time, was a red wine drinker. I love red wine, but I ain't gonna lie, I love our white blend. I also think, obviously, it's summertime. It's a Chardonnay, Chenin Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc, so it's the best of, in my opinion, the white varietals. And it's been my go-to right now. I usually start the day with the white blend, and I end the day with the red blend. But again, I think it's subjective. I think it depends on your mood, how you feel, what you have on, where you're going, who you're hanging with, what you're doing for the day. But right now, I'm a white blend girl. Yeah.
Nice, nice. And wine names, some of the varieties are tricky to say. What are the ones that you find that people struggle with?
I would say for me, Chenin Blanc, interestingly enough, is one of the varietals that people are like, Shannon, like they're not really sure. But I also want to make sure that you guys hear it from people like us. There's no wrong answers in wine. Yes, you want to nail it. You want to be able to say the varietals right, but you just got to practice it, right? And if you don't think you're pronouncing it correctly, just ask someone who could potentially teach you how to pronounce it correctly. But I would say Chenin Blanc is the one for me that I'm oftentimes having to say it's Chenin Blanc.
Right, because people are like Chandon.
Exactly.
We're trying out here. How about you? What are the ones that you find that people kind of struggle with when it comes to the names?
Well, so much of wine and wine language is actually other languages.
Other languages, yeah.
So I find some of the Italian wines I find that, oh wow, y'all, I'm naturally loud, by the way.
Yes.
So that's great. So some of the wines, like Montepulcianos or Sauvignon Blancs, wines that are actually in another language, might be harder to say.
True.
But yeah, we love to educate on that as well.
We'll share it. And what would you recommend people pair certain red wines and white wines with when it comes to making the most of the flavors for the dishes that they like?
Ooh, I love food and wine pairings. We all love to eat, but I also am very passionate about wine. With food and wine pairings, it's really simple. Like, try not to overthink it. there's room for trial and error. So as general rule of thumb, speaking in broad strokes, if you will, the flavor intensity of the food that you're having should match the flavor intensity of the wine that you're drinking. The idea is that you never want one to overpower the other. In a perfect world, they're friends, they get along, they do a little dance, and that's when you really create a whole new experience separate from the food by itself and the wine by itself.
Yeah, agreed.
And what would you say are some great pairings for red wines and white wines?
Yeah, so you know what? Again, subjective, but I love Italian food. And what I love about Italian food is that you can enjoy white wine and red wine with Italian food. That's what I love about Italian food. So depending on my mood, what pasta I'm eating, either varietals coming from white or red are great for pairing with Italian food, in my opinion. So I think for me, the biggest thing is, to your point, don't let the food overpower the wine and vice versa. They have to complement one another. It's a complement. It's a dance. It is a dance. Yes.
Nice. And I wanted to ask you, there are a lot of, wines out there in the market. A lot of Black people are starting to become entrepreneurs in the wine industry, which is amazing. What makes iBest stand out? What would you say people should know about your wine, that they're here? Do you have a whole new possible customer base right here?
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit more about what sets iBest wines apart from what's out there?
A few things. I mentioned I'm a ex-wine and spirits veteran. I worked for some big companies in my life, and I decided to bet on myself. And for anyone here who's an aspiring entrepreneur, iBest Wines really represents the ability to bet on yourself and go after what you love. So I would say that's the first thing. iBest Wines has 2 blends from South Africa. So these wines are from South Africa. And most people don't know that there's wine being made and produced in South Africa. Incredible wine. They've been producing wine for over 300 years. And so for me, it's really important that I'm really, singing the gospel of the South African wine region. And then I would say the third thing that makes iBest Wine special is that it's my namesake. And so I'm leaving a legacy in an industry that I've pretty much given my life to. And so I would say those are 3 things, and it's award-winning wine. So.
Nice. I love that. And Krista, can you tell us what makes Pinot Noir stand out? Obviously, you know so much about wine. You've educated yourself as a sommelier. What did you use to make this one of the standout wines out there? And also, tell us about the experience people can get at your tasting room, too.
So, Pinot Noir wines really began as a labor of love. I already mentioned that I fell in love with wine during my travels. My husband, Kenneth, and I, shout out to my husband, we had the epiphany to become wine producers when we discovered that less than 1% of global producers of wine are African American. 0.07%, y'all. And this is after being a consumer of wine for years, after being a wine enthusiast, and spending my hard-earned coin on wine. And so the epiphany was, why don't we have more ownership and representation in this space? So we set out to be the representation we wanted to see.
Yes.
The representation that we wanted to see is what we set out to do. And since then, we started with 1 wine, Pure Epiphany. We now produce 13 different premium and award-winning wines with medals ranging from gold medals, double golds, platinum awards, 93+ point rated wines. But also, we're the city of Houston's first Black-owned winery. And so I'm a born and raised Houstonian. And making, shout out to everybody from the H.
Yes.
But making history in the city that made me, in the city that raised me, that hits so hard. That to this day, even saying it out loud to you all, it's like, man. Yeah. And so, but it's also a testament to the work that's still yet to be done. Because in 2021, the city of Houston's first Black-owned winery.
Right.
And then we have since opened our second tasting room in the city of Dallas. Beautiful space. And the experience in our tasting room is, one, it's approachable, right? Friendly and knowledgeable wine associates will guide you. It's interactive, right? It's an adventure. It's fun.
Yeah.
Guide you and meet you on your journey no matter where you are on your journey. If it's your very first wine tasting, if you consider yourself completely novice, or if you yourself, it's not your first rodeo, right? Like, you've tasted wines, you know wines. And so we're your people. We're your people.
Yeah.
The wines are also available online as well and shipped throughout the country.
Awesome. And as you mentioned, less than 1%, Black people are being the ones responsible for making wine within this industry. Can you talk about maybe hurdles that you faced and in the journey of making these beautiful bottles of wine that taste amazing? What were some of the things you might have come up against that, you deal with when it's not a very diverse space?
Yeah, so again, spending 20 years in the wine and spirits industry, oftentimes in the organizations that I work for, I was the only person that looked like me. So this is a very personal journey for us, right? Because we're unlocking some things and we're taking up space in an industry that hasn't always welcomed us. I would say the biggest hurdle is capital, right? I've invested all of my capital to build this brand. And oftentimes people don't have the capital to even get started. So I would say one of the biggest hurdles, especially for Black and brown women, is access to capital. Even though we are the fastest growing entrepreneurs, we are building billion-dollar companies, shout out to Fawn Weaver, it is hard for us to access capital. So I would say that's probably the biggest, but it's opportunity. So I want to end on a high. Although there are challenges and hurdles, nothing's impossible. Everything is possible, and we're examples of that. So, yeah.
Ooh, the challenges. Ingrid and I were backstage talking about the challenges. We're both moms. Managing a growing wine company, along with your personal life, your family. Like, my daughter's 5.5, and she's my world. And Pure Noir, we've invested everything into it. We employ quite a number of people. And the challenges in entrepreneurship in general, like if you are an entrepreneur, you have to learn the art of the pivot, and you have to be able to overcome adversity. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like Pure Noir was born in the darkness because of our timing. We had started producing our wines in 2018. Wow. We were passionately crafting these beautiful French barrel-aged wines. Mm-hmm. And one of our best-selling wines, we were tasting her out of the barrel. I refer to my wine as her, but we were tasting her out of the barrel, and she was beautiful. Just a Petite Syrah red blend, aged for 18 months.
Yes.
And then we decided that she was ready for bottling, and we set our launch date. No one had tasted our wines before, but we set that date, y'all, for March of 2020. We all remember what we were doing in March of 2020. I was trying to get a new wine brand off the ground, and we had this huge wine release soiree planned. It was a sold-out event, 150 tickets. The state of Texas shut down the week before the soiree. We had to refund all those tickets. I didn't know what would come of the brand, but fortunately, people were drinking a lot of wine, and we actually sold out of our first 3 wines in a matter of months. And so from there, I knew that if we could overcome that obstacle, that hurdle, that we could get through anything.
I love that. And we were talking backstage about like wine and tasting and everything, what comes on your palate being a subjective thing. So for people out there who are like trying to get into wine, but you're like, I don't know if this is really for me. I don't know if I'm tasting what other people are tasting, or if I'm doing it right, drinking it right. What do you want those people to know so that they can enjoy the wine tasting experience?
Yeah, so I think what we have to do is dispel the myth, right? Dispel the myth that we don't know what there is to know about wine. With everything, there's a start. You have to start someplace, quiet the noise, drink what you like. That's the other thing. It's back to me saying, wine is like art. It's subjective. You like the art that you like the wine that you like. So there's no rules. And I think people need to feel the freedom and take the freedom of entering into, becoming wine drinkers where they are. I just think we have to dispel that there's like rules on how to do it. Now, there are beautiful people who are sommeliers who can take you through that process and really educate you and take you on the journey that you want to go on. But one thing about wine is that there's always something to learn.
Yes.
There's always something to learn. So my advice is start where you are, drink what you like, and quiet the noise around the myths. There's this myth that we only like sweet wine. Well, that's not the case for everybody. Find things that are approachable. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I think definitely ask questions. Ask lots and lots of questions. and taste lots and lots of different wines.
Yeah.
And again, it is very subjective, to
Yeah.
Ingrid's point. You like what you like, right? And there is no right or wrong. So even if you come to Pure Noir and we're guiding you through a beautiful wine tasting experience, we also want to hear from you. What do you taste? We'll tell you what the flavors and the notes and the aromas are, but it's so personal, y'all.
Yeah.
It might actually come down to your personal life experiences, things that you've tasted, are also things that you'll be able to detect in the wine. But drink more wine. Just start somewhere.
Just
There's no right or wrong.
Enjoy yourself.
Drink, y'all, drink. Just drink it up.
Responsibly.
Right. Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
But speaking of drink, the last question I wanted to ask you, which is a fun one. Everybody knows you love wine. We see these beautiful wines here. But cocktails, what is your go-to cocktail for a Friday night, Saturday night, fun night? Talk to me.
You go first.
Oh, man. Okay. I am a beverage enthusiast as well.
Yes.
So when it's not wine or Pure Noir wines, I enjoy a spicy margarita. I think it gives me layers of enjoyment. And also a dirty martini. So it's just my mood.
Yeah, admittedly, I'm not a big cocktail girl, but I see this espresso martini craze going on, and for years and years, I worked on vodka brands and tried to sell espresso martinis, so it's nice to see that finally people are drinking espresso martinis. So, I would say an espresso martini. It's fun, there's a little bit of a dessert element to it, but really, I drink wine.
Wine.
Yeah.
So you got some recommendations for what to drink with wine and cocktails, and you have these amazing wines here, Pure Noir, iBest Wines. Make sure you check them out. Can we give a round of applause for these fabulous entrepreneurs taking over the wine industry? Show them some love. Thank you so much, ladies, for your time today.
Thank you. You guys have a beautiful weekend. Be safe. Have a good time and drink some wine.
Thanks, y'all. Enjoy.